The city of Scifi glimmered like a jewel under its twin suns. Towering crystalline structures reflected light in every direction, and floating platforms connected the spires in a network of motion. The city was alive with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some had 6 limbs, some glided through the air, and some seemed like living gemstones. Humans were rare here, almost a curiosity, and those who came were often treated as amusing novelties rather than equals. Ethan stood at the entrance of the grand diplomatic hall, feeling the hum of alien energy in the air. He was a human, tall and lean, with an expression of quiet focus. He had been sent as an ambassador for Earth, not just to negotiate alliances, but to show humanity's intelligence and reliability to the interstellar community. He had trained for this mission for years, yet he knew that charm alone would not be enough. The aliens of Scifi were proud, sophisticated, and sometimes arrogant. One misstep could ruin everything. As he entered the hall, Ethan noticed the opulent crowd. Alien nobles in colorful robes floated on levitating platforms, while advisors and attendants moved briskly below. His eyes scanned the room carefully. Despite the grandeur, he remained calm. Every detail mattered: the subtle gestures of the audience, the positioning of guards, the tone of conversation. At the center of the hall, on a high platform of polished crystal, stood the young alien royal, Prince Leixar. Leixar's skin shimmered with a natural iridescence, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. He was young, perhaps barely 2 decades old by Scifian reckoning, yet already proud and headstrong. The humans called him a prince, but his presence suggested he had the ambition of a king. "Ah, the human," Leixar said, his voice carrying easily across the hall. His words were polished, but there was a sharp edge to them. "Come forward and greet us." Ethan approached, walking steadily, ignoring the whispers around him. Some aliens nudged each other, pointing at him. Humans had a reputation for brashness, for being impulsive. But Ethan's calm, deliberate movements challenged their expectations. "Welcome to Scifi," Leixar continued, his tone shifting. "I hear humans are clever, though primitive in many ways. Your technology is limited. Your diplomacy is raw. Do you think you can negotiate with beings far wiser than yourselves?" A few gasps echoed in the hall. Ethan felt the weight of the insult, but he did not respond immediately. Instead, he paused, allowing Leixar's words to sink in. Every eye in the room was on him. The young prince leaned slightly forward, his expression smug, waiting for a reaction. Then, without a word, Ethan turned and walked away. Slowly, silently, the hall went silent. The murmur of conversation froze, then erupted into whispers. Some aliens looked confused, some impressed, and some annoyed. How dare a human ignore the prince? How dare he walk away? Leixar's expression darkened. "Wait, what is he doing?" he demanded. "Bring him back. That human has no respect." Ethan moved toward the side exit, his mind clear. There was no need to answer immediately. Words could inflame. Action could demonstrate truth. Humans were not always loud or aggressive, but when they acted, they often surpassed expectations. Outside the hall, the corridors of the palace were quieter, lined with glowing panels and intricate designs. Ethan slowed for a moment, taking in the architecture, the subtle mechanisms of security, and the presence of the palace guards. He did not look back. He did not feel fear, he only observed. Every step, every detail mattered. Back in the hall, Leixar's advisors whispered urgently. "He dares to ignore the prince. This is disrespectful," one said. Another shook their head. "Perhaps he is clever, but arrogance is dangerous. He could embarrass us or worse, himself." Leixar's eyes narrowed. He had expected resistance, maybe an argument, but this silence was infuriating. The young royal was used to confrontation ending in immediate submission. Humans, he realized, were not so easily provoked. Ethan found a quiet alcove overlooking the city. From here, he could see the streets below, filled with airships and alien pedestrians. He allowed himself a moment to breathe and plan. Words had their place, but observation, patience, and intelligence often mattered more. He would not be baited into a display of emotion. Not here, not now. Meanwhile, rumors of his silent walk spread through the palace like wildfire. Some nobles admired his composure. "See how human dignity differs from our own pride," one whispered to another. Others found it insulting that someone of lesser status ignored the prince in public. Hours later, the young royal called for a private council with his advisors. This human, Ethan, yes, he walks away as if he owns the world. "We cannot tolerate this insolence," Leixar said, his voice tense. "We must test him. If he is clever, let us see it. If he is weak, he will falter soon enough." The advisors nodded, but a sense of uncertainty lingered. None had ever encountered a species that remained calm in the face of direct insult. Most expected humans to fight or defend themselves immediately. Ethan had shattered that expectation. That evening, a feast was held in Ethan's honor, though the tension in the air was palpable. The table was vast, filled with exotic dishes from Zyphera and neighboring planets. Aliens watched Ethan carefully, curious about his reactions. Leixar approached, his expression composed but calculating. "Human, I trust you find our customs fascinating," he asked, his words polite but his tone measured. Ethan nodded politely. "Yes, Your Highness, your culture is rich and detailed. I am learning a great deal." His voice was calm, steady, without hint of sarcasm or anger. Leixar studied him for a long moment. "Very well," he said finally. "We shall see if your actions match your words." And with that, the young royal moved away, leaving Ethan to his observations. That night, as he walked through the palace gardens, Ethan considered his approach. He would not fight pride with pride, nor insult with insult. Patience and strategy were his tools. He would show the aliens the strength of humanity, not through aggression, but through intelligence, adaptability, and calm. The stars above Zyphera seemed brighter that night, as if signaling a coming change. Humanity's reputation in this distant corner of the galaxy depended not on force, but on quiet, deliberate strength. Ethan knew that tomorrow would bring challenges. Leixar would test him. Other aliens would try to undermine him, but he also knew something the young prince did not. Humans often succeeded in ways others could not predict. The silent walk was only the beginning. As he returned to his quarters, Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. He was ready. And somewhere deep in the palace, Prince Leixar paced, frustrated and uneasy. For the first time, he realized that humans might not be what they seemed. The morning sun rose over Zyphera, casting long, glittering shadows across the crystalline city. Ethan walked through the palace corridors with the same calm focus he had shown the day before. The silent walk had made ripples through the court, and whispers followed him wherever he went. Some aliens admired his composure, others were skeptical, but all were curious. Prince Leixar, however, was not one to be ignored. In his chambers, the young royal paced, a swirl of frustration in his mind. How could a human, a seemingly fragile species, refuse to react to direct insult? Leixar was used to bending others with his words, with authority, even with fear. Yet Ethan had walked away without flinching. That silence, more than any shout or argument, unsettled him. "Prepare the tests," Leixar ordered his advisors. "We will see if this human is truly worthy or merely clever at hiding weakness. He cannot ignore us forever." The first challenge came within hours. Ethan was summoned to the council chamber, a massive hall filled with glowing panels and floating platforms. Aliens of all species filled the room, their eyes curious and cautious. At the center, Leixar waited, his posture regal and confident. "Human," Leixar began, his voice echoing, "I have arranged a series of tasks to determine your capabilities. Do not disappoint us." "We expect excellence, even from a primitive species." Ethan nodded politely. "I will do my best, Your Highness." The first task was one of logic. A complex puzzle of interlocking energy fields floated in midair, shifting constantly. Several alien diplomats had attempted it before, failing to align the fields into a functioning circuit. Ethan studied it carefully. Where others had tried brute force or repeated guessing, he observed patterns, noticed subtle shifts, and predicted movements. With a few precise adjustments, the energy fields clicked into place, forming a perfect circuit. A ripple of astonishment ran through the audience. Aliens who had doubted him could not hide their surprise. Leixar, however, maintained his composure, though his eyes betrayed a hint of disbelief. "Impressive," he said, "but intelligence alone does not prove worth. Let us see how you handle challenge under pressure." The next task was physical, though not in a way humans usually expected. A large platform descended into a simulation chamber, where obstacles moved unpredictably. Aliens who excelled in agility or levitation often failed to adapt to the constantly changing environment. Ethan entered calmly, his movements deliberate and precise. He did not attempt to mimic alien grace or speed. Instead, he relied on observation and timing. He leapt when necessary, ducked when needed, and used the environment to his advantage. At one point, he triggered a counterweight system, allowing him to clear an obstacle with minimal effort. By the end of the trial, he had completed it flawlessly. The crowd erupted in whispers once again. Some were skeptical, attributing his success to luck. Others began to notice a pattern. Humans were not the fastest, the strongest, or the flashiest, but they were clever, adaptable, and patient. Leixar, growing increasingly frustrated, called for the third challenge. This one was diplomatic. Ethan was presented with a tense negotiation scenario. Two alien factions were on the brink of conflict over resource rights. The room expected failure. Aliens assumed that a human could not navigate the complex social rules of Xiferan culture. Ethan listened carefully to both sides. He asked thoughtful questions, clarified misunderstandings, and proposed compromises that respected each faction's concerns. He did not boast or claim authority. He simply used logic, empathy, and reasoning. Slowly, tension eased and the factions agreed to a resolution. Even Leixar could not deny it. For the first time, he felt a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. This human, this simple, quiet human, was showing qualities he had not anticipated. But the young prince was not ready to concede. "Very well," he said finally. "You have intelligence, patience, and skill, but can you act under uncertainty? Can you protect others when danger appears?" The next test was not a simulation. It was real. A transport shuttle malfunctioned in the palace docking bay, endangering several alien engineers. The crowd gasped as alarms blared. Many high-ranking aliens hesitated, unsure how to respond. Ethan moved immediately. He assessed the situation, noticing structural weaknesses and energy surges. He coordinated the engineers, giving clear instructions while manually stabilizing the shuttle systems. Sparks flew and warning lights flashed, but Ethan remained calm, guiding the team until the shuttle was safe and no one was hurt. Silence fell over the council chamber. Humans were rare in Xiphera, and rarely did anyone see one act with such courage and precision under pressure. Ethan's calm determination had saved lives without a single word of complaint or bravado. Leixar, standing at the center of the hall, felt a pang of unease. His advisors whispered behind him, some nodding subtly, their faces showing admiration. The young prince realized that humans, for all their seeming fragility, had a unique combination of intelligence, courage, and adaptability that could not be matched by arrogance or power alone. Days passed, and Ethan continued to prove his worth in various tasks. He solved engineering problems the aliens had abandoned as unsolvable. He assisted in diplomatic negotiations, often finding solutions that others had overlooked. He studied alien culture and behavior, learning subtle cues that gave him an edge. Through it all, Ethan remained silent when provoked, calm when challenged, and persistent when tested. The court began to notice that his quiet demeanor was not weakness, but strength. His actions spoke louder than words. One evening, after a particularly difficult negotiation, Lykesar approached him privately. The young prince's pride was bruised, but curiosity mixed with respect. "Human," he said, "you do not react as others do. You are calm when insulted, clever when challenged, and brave when danger appears. Why do you behave this way?" Ethan looked at him, steady and unflinching. Words and anger can inflame conflict. Patience, observation, and action often achieve more. Humans have learned that being impulsive does not always help. Sometimes the quiet approach is stronger than force. Lykesar considered this, frowning. He had never been challenged in this way. Most beings responded to his authority, flattery, or intimidation. This human responded with reason, composure, and effectiveness. The young prince realized something important. Humans were not like other species. They did not rely on status or innate power alone. They relied on creativity, observation, empathy, and adaptability. They could surprise anyone who underestimated them. As the days went on, Ethan earned the quiet respect of the council and several factions in the city. The initial insult, the one that had started this entire chain of events, was no longer the focus. Instead, humans were becoming a point of fascination. What could they accomplish if given opportunity? What other strengths did they hide beneath their calm demeanor? Lykesar, though still proud and headstrong, began to see that Ethan's silence and skill were teaching him lessons about humility, patience, and perception. Perhaps there was more to this species than he had ever imagined. By the end of the second week, a shift had occurred in the palace. Aliens no longer laughed at the humans' presence. Some even sought Ethan's advice, quietly, away from the prince's watchful eye. Ethan did not seek power or attention. He continued to act with calm intelligence, letting his actions speak for him. And throughout it all, the silent walk remained a symbol. The moment Ethan had ignored the insult and turned away quietly was remembered by many as the beginning of humanity's unexpected rise in Zyphera. Ethan knew that greater challenges still lay ahead. Lykesar was young and ambitious. Other aliens were curious and cautious. The galaxy itself was full of unknowns, but he also knew something else. Humans could accomplish what others thought impossible. Their strength was not in arrogance, not in aggression, but in cleverness, perseverance, and courage. And so, in the grand city of Zyphera, the human quietly continued to show his worth. He was not loud, he was not flashy, but he was more capable than many imagined. And that was only the beginning. The city of Zyphera buzzed with anticipation. Word of the human, Ethan, had spread throughout the palace and across the city. Aliens whispered in the corridors, watched his actions carefully, and debated what made him different. Prince Lykesar, however, was restless. He had watched Ethan for weeks, noting his calm intelligence and quiet courage. Yet the young royal could not forget the sting of that first silent walk. It was as if Ethan had refused to play the game of status and pride, a challenge that no alien could ignore. "Prepare the final test," Lykesar commanded. His voice echoed through the council chambers. "This will decide if the human is clever, brave, and capable of honor, or if he is merely lucky." The palace buzzed with activity as preparations began. The final challenge was unlike the previous ones. It combined diplomacy, strategy, and physical skill. It would test the human's intellect, his courage, and his ability to protect others. In short, it would test everything about him that made humans unique. When Ethan was summoned, he walked through the grand hall with his usual calm. The alien's eyes followed him, some curious, some skeptical, some admiring. He approached Lykesar, who stood at the center of a large arena. The room was filled with alien observers. Some floated on levitating platforms, others stood at the edge of the arena, watching closely. "This is your final test," Lykesar said. You will face a situation that will require you to act quickly, think clearly, and protect lives. Fail and your species' reputation will suffer. Succeed and you will earn respect not just from me but from every being here." Ethan nodded. "I understand, Your Highness. I will do my best." The arena doors opened, revealing a complex landscape of platforms, corridors, and obstacles. On the far side, a group of alien engineers were trapped by a simulated energy surge. The surge was dangerous, unpredictable, and could destroy equipment or injure anyone who moved carelessly. The spectators held their breath. Many doubted a human could manage this situation. They had watched Ethan in controlled tests, but this was different. Here, the stakes were real. Ethan assessed the situation carefully. He did not rush. He noted the movement patterns of the energy surges, the positions of the trapped engineers, and the structure of the platforms. He formulated a plan. Humans were not the fastest or the strongest, but they were adaptable and resourceful. Step by step, Ethan moved into the arena. He gave clear instructions to the engineers, directing them to safe zones while he worked to stabilize the platforms. Sparks flew, energy fields pulsed, and alarms rang, but Ethan's calm presence gave the group confidence. He did not panic. He did not shout. He simply acted, using logic, observation, and courage. At one point, a support beam threatened to collapse. An alien observer gasped, expecting disaster. But Ethan quickly calculated the angle and used a nearby counterweight system to reinforce the beam. The engineers moved to safety. Another surge of energy threatened the control panel, and Ethan adjusted the wiring with precision, diverting power safely and preventing damage. Minutes passed like hours. The audience was silent, captivated by the humans' methodical actions. Even Leixar watched with a mixture of tension and admiration. This was not the impulsive, fragile species he had assumed humans to be. This was something far more remarkable. Finally, the last engineer was safe. Ethan activated the final control sequence, shutting down the energy surges and stabilizing the arena. The test was complete and no lives were lost. A wave of astonishment swept through the crowd. Aliens whispered excitedly, some nodding in approval, others staring in disbelief. Ethan's quiet strength had achieved what many believed impossible. Leixar stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He had been testing Ethan not only to challenge him, but also to learn from the human himself. Now, standing in the aftermath of the test, he understood the lesson. "You have done well," Leixar said. "Not because you are the strongest or the fastest, but because you are clever, patient, and brave. You act with intelligence and care, not pride or arrogance. That is something our species often lacks." Ethan bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Highness. Humans believe that action and reason often speak louder than words." The young prince paused, looking at him intently. "I underestimated your kind. I judged humans as impulsive and weak. I see now that we judged too quickly. Your patience, ingenuity, and courage are impressive." It was a rare moment of humility from Leixar. The young prince had learned a lesson that humans had known for centuries. Strength was not only in power or pride, but in adaptability, intelligence, and courage. The observers erupted in applause, not just for Ethan, but for the revelation of human capability. Other species whispered in awe. Some approached him, seeking guidance, advice, or cooperation. Humans were no longer a curiosity, they were a species to be respected. Even the young prince extended his hand. "Ethan," he said, "I hope that one day humans and Xiferans can work together. I see now that your kind has much to offer." Ethan shook his hand firmly. "I would be honored, Your Highness. Mutual respect and cooperation can achieve great things for both our species." In the following days, humanity's reputation in Xiphera grew. Diplomatic channels opened, collaborations on engineering and exploration began, and humans became trusted allies in the Interstellar Council. But Ethan remained the same, calm, observant, and focused. He did not boast of victories. He allowed his actions to speak. Prince Leixar, too, had changed. He continued to be proud and ambitious, but he had gained humility. He realized that leadership required more than arrogance. It required understanding, patience, and the ability to recognize the strengths of others, even those he had once underestimated. One evening, as the twin suns set over the city, Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The same serenity that had guided him in the beginning still accompanied him. He knew the challenges were not over. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown civilizations and potential dangers, but humanity had proven itself capable. Humans could adapt, learn, and succeed in ways that others could not anticipate. Leixar watched from a distance, reflecting. The memory of that first silent walk, the moment when Ethan had refused to respond to insult, remained vivid. That simple act had set in motion a series of events that reshaped not only the prince's understanding of humans, but also the perception of an entire galaxy. The city of Zyphera, with all its beauty and complexity, seemed brighter now. Its citizens had seen a new example of courage, intelligence, and dignity. And humans, once considered primitive and impulsive, were now seen as a species of potential and promise. Ethan smiled faintly, knowing that the path ahead was still full of challenges. But he also knew that humans had a unique strength, the ability to rise above insult, to act with reason under pressure, and to earn respect through deeds rather than words. And that strength, quiet but undeniable, would carry humanity far across the stars. In the quiet of the palace gardens, under the glow of Zyphera's twin suns, the human had walked, observed, acted, and triumphed, not with arrogance or force, but with patience, intelligence, and courage. The silent walk had not only defined him, it had defined what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of surprises. And for the first time, Prince Leixar understood that humans were more than he had ever imagined. The galaxy had taken notice. The human had shown the way. And this was only the beginning.